r/ask Reddit. What's the best way you've seen someone rebel against school rules? Back in the 1980s there was one kid in my school was hardcore into the punk scene. Had a bright blue, 6 inches high, razor thin, stand up straight mohawk. The principal gave him detention for being a distraction, etc. And his parting words that day were, "And tomorrow, no more blue mohawk." The next day the kid came in with the same mohawk, only bright pink. He should have seen this one coming. Yet, a bright pink mohawk would be pretty difficult to miss. The hawk of the high school is the coolest man to exist. No hats in school. In high school junior year, there was this one kid in my grade that was allowed to due to him having alopecia universalis, which is basically having rapid baldness. A new teacher wasn't aware that he was allowed to and asked him to take it off. The kid explained why he was able to, but the sub didn't believe him, forced him to take it off, and was being very cruel to him for wearing the hat his lack of hair. The next day, everyone wore hats to school as a sort of rebellion against the teacher. She got really mad and started yelling at the students and said some nasty things. She got fired. Senior year, my school banned jackets. A friend was cold, wore his jacket to lunch, and the VP told him to take it off. Friend pulls out the student handbook and asked where it said he couldn't wear it. VP flips for a while and ends up showing him the comma or anything. The administration seems disruptive clause. Friend rolls his eyes but takes off his coat. The next day, friend comes in with the same tweed sport coat the VP wore every day. Who the hell bans jackets? My school did once. They said it was dangerous if there ever was a fire. How the hell they came to that conclusion I know not. However, the school was really poorly built with concrete walls and next to no heating, so at some times of the year the indoor heat fell below 15°C. The Work Environment Authority recommends an indoor temperature of 20-24°C. We told our teachers to basically either let us wear jackets or fix the heating, otherwise we would report them. They let us wear them. After the Columbine shooting, our school banned black trench coats. For the most part, nobody cared. Except the mysteriously gothic trench coat kid. He had worn a trademark black trench coat every single day because it made him different. And then all of a sudden the school tells him he can't do that anymore. So the kid went out of his way to find or make different colored trench coats and wore those instead. My favorite one was covered in duct tape. TLDR. Gothic Joseph in the Technicolor trench coat. Reminds me of a guy who came to school every day dressed in old-fashioned formal clothing. Suits, top hats, cravats, fake fur coats. I bumped into him the other day and he still dresses like that. I'm glad he does. I was at a private school that had rules about the length of boys' hair. One guy in particular always ignored the rule and the administration would tell him to get a haircut every so often. But he never did. Eventually when his hair got about down to his shoulders, the principal pulled him aside and told him his hair was twice the allowed length and by next week it needed to be shortened by half. Monday rolls around and he comes in with half his head shaved and the other side as long as ever. We were impressed by literal interpretation of the principal's request, but it still ended up with him getting a suspension for a week and he had to shave the other side before he could come back. I went to private school that told me I couldn't have hair past my neck. I loved having long hair so I did it anyway. They told me my hair had to change over the weekend, so I dyed it pink, which was also against the rules. Long story short, I am no longer at that school. Should have tied the hair and made a bun out of it on top of your scalp. Technically it wasn't past your neck. He should have just combed the half over. After 9/11 my school made a rule where we had to wear our school IDs. They went overboard quick, handing out detention to anyone who didn't wear one. One kid had his ID blown up and put on a shirt. On the back it said, "Yes, I'm wearing my ducking ID." He got detention for not wearing it with the shirt. They're bringing back all that ID stuff where I go. Why don't they just tattoo identification numbers on all the inmates? I mean students. We had to do that after Columbine. Some genius decided that they should have our picture, name, year, and full address printed on the front and had to be worn on a neck lanyard at all times. Even when teachers with children at the school complained, the administration didn't want to backtrack. They threatened students who obscured the info with stickers with punishment for vandalism. Then suddenly it all went away. I wouldn't be surprised if the school district lawyer had some concerns. We had to do that too, but then everyone started using them as weapons and whipping the shit out of each other in the hallway or Indiana Jones snapping it at St. Peter's. It lasted less than a year before they took them away. Friend was told in high school by his guidance counselor not to waste his time applying to his dream school because he wouldn't get in. He got pissed off and went to the principal, who told him it was the counselor's job to give her best opinion. So he trusts whatever she says. He applied anyways, and got in. He took the acceptance letter, made a copy, and taped them to both the principal and counselor's door with "thanks for nothing" written on both. He didn't even go to that school. He couldn't afford it, but it was the principle of the matter. The "I trust what my counselor say" thing is such a lazy attempt for the principal to essentially say, "I don't want to deal with trouble from my staff, so I won't even address the problem." When I was in high school, there was a rule implemented that if you showed up late to school, you had to go to the front office to get a detention slip. You would then have to give it to the teacher for that period, who would then mark it down, and you were required to go to lunch detention for that day. I figured out by the third slip that literally no one cared. Teachers, security, or students. So when I was subsequently late for the rest of the year, I would take out an old slip that I had from a previous detention, walk through school, give it to my teacher to mark down, then take it back to give to the lunch detention supervisor. But I never went to detention because the front office didn't have record of me being late. I was late no less than 50 times my senior year, only having been reprimanded the initial 3 times. I even told my parents about it after I had graduated, and even they agreed it was dumb and funny. My school had a similarly easy to abuse tardy system. 3 tardies less than 10 minutes late equaled an unexcused absence, and you were allowed 13 of those for every class. So that meant you could miss the first 10 minutes of every class 38 times with no consequences except teacher annoyance. It also reset at the semester break. No idea why the policy was so lenient, except that it was a very upper middle class school full of high achievers who vastly outnumbered slackers like myself. When I was in grade 7, our last class of the day, students would always bring in snacks. Our lunch shift was way too early in the day, so by the end of the school day we'd all be feeling hungry, and we were all told by our teacher that if we didn't have enough to share we couldn't eat in the classroom. One day, almost all of us brought in enough food to share, even with the students that didn't bring anything in. We even synchronized the times that we pulled all our food out. Our teacher was clueless. She had no idea what to tell us. There wasn't any school-wide no food in classrooms rule, so she couldn't run to the principal. Finally she gave in to our malicious compliance and allowed us to share food for the rest of the period. Guy was wearing shoes against the uniform policy and was asked to put on shoes from lost property. He went around school barefoot all day. How does a pair of shoes end up in lost property? I'm imagining another kid at some point also walking around all day barefoot, like wonder where the duck my shoes are? Plenty of students would bring in shoes that they only planned on wearing for gym or something. Last year our school fetched in a ban on backpacks and bags in general since they were apparently a safety hazard. 2 days later some guy in my year group comes in carrying his books and pencil case in a microwave. Dude made national news. A kid was passing notes, and the teacher caught him and insisted he had to give the note so she could read it out loud. He ate the note. I can only imagine what it said that he felt the need to eat it, lol. That teacher drawn in stickman style with huge round tits, beaver and her name with an arrow pointing at the drawing. As if I actually look like this. My daughters both went to a Catholic high school. My younger one had a bit of a wild streak. The girls were required to wear a skirt every day to school. My daughter did not care for this rule and wore her skirt around her head one day since the dress code required the students to wear a skirt, just not wear. I was told that she was wearing spandex underneath. That's how my daughter got a new rule in her high school dress code. Ooh, that's a good one. I also rebelled against that rule at my Catholic high school. First I wore pants until I got too many detentions. So I started wearing the absolute most obnoxious outfits that fit the dress code, generally a leopard print skirt, knee-high zebra socks, and some other loud shirt, or I would wear pants under the skirt. They changed the dress code the next year. Girls got to wear pants again. My high school was always issuing new dress code rules for the girls. Mini skirts had to be longer than your arm. No tube tops, etc. One day, all the boys dressed in drag, breaking all the rules. No violation because the dress code specified only girls. That's bullshit. If you got long ape arms you gotta wear stuff down to your knees. If you got short ass T-Rex arms you can just walk around in your underwear. Elementary school had a ban on extreme hair colors. My brother shows up with fire truck red hair. Principal stops us both as we're entering the school and she's going off on my brother. She's berating him, saying who do you know that has red hair like that, without skipping a beat. Ronald McDonald. Principal just grabbed him, drug him into the office. My 4th grade brain was in shock that he just won up to grown up like that. She called my dad and he promptly didn't give a duck and months later bro went from red to green to purple. Okay, so we need to have clear backpacks, right? This kid puts quite the vulgar image depicting the counselor on one of his notebooks and packs it against the edges of the pack. Guns and drugs. The kind of thing that kids aren't supposed to have, so they just toss them into their backpack loose like a knot wrapped up or stuck into a book or something. Hey Joe, aren't you supposed to be in class? Yep, one word. Doesn't look like much in text, but he said it such full acceptance and resolution that the teacher didn't follow up or say anything else. Just, okay, got it, you're not going. I'll move on and not waste any more time here. And they kept walking. Sometimes attitude is everything. Sometimes you can say a lot with a single word. As a teacher, I never fight to make random kids in the hall follow the rules. It's a bad path to start on. I get enough stress from my own class. I can't help but laugh at the teachers I see constantly yelling at kids in the hall that they don't even know. I went to a Catholic grade school growing up that had a strict boys' hair length policy. It couldn't touch the collar of your shirt and I wanted long hair. So the principal came in one day to talk to the class. When she was leaving the room she called me out for my long hair in front of my classmates. My response was to point to the cross hanging above the door and said Jesus had long hair. She didn't know what to say right away and seemed embarrassed, but then pulled me outside and yelled at me to get it cut. Don't mess with Catholic nuns. You can almost call it a Hail Mary tactic. In my private school boys were required to wear a collared shirt. It really wasn't enforced. Until one day it was. I was wearing a sweater without a collared shirt underneath and I had to go back to the dorm and change. I argued that I didn't look ratty or underdressed at all, but they said rules were rules. The next day I wore a white t-shirt with a collar, cut off from one of my older shirts, stapled to it. It looked terrible, but rules are rules. DIY builds. In 3rd grade, early 90s, my brother did not want to participate in some sort of multiple class activity. He just hung around the edges until a teacher approached him and told him, "Now dear, you can't be here without participating." Brother took what she said to heart and waited for a chance to slip away. He made it about 3 miles before a family friend noticed him and drove him the rest of the way home. I remember mom being upset at him, but even more angry at the school for taking 4 hours to notice he was gone when they took a head count after lunch. One day my friends and I had gotten to school early for an extracurricular event. After the event we decided we weren't really feeling school that day and decided to do the 3-hour walk home. One of my friend's mother saw us about 2.5 hours into the walk. The canteen stopped selling sachets of red sauce due to the mess some kids were making. My friend carried a huge bottle of red sauce in his bag for at least a month and provided illegal red sauce for the cost of 5p per squirt. Made a fortune. I was in a Christian high school at the time. The day before winter break rolls around and I had packed a few Toblerone chocolate bars and some notes for the teachers I most appreciated, with the intention of leaving them as a Christmas gift. Before school the principal made a public announcement that students were not to give any teachers any gifts unless we were going to give all teachers the same gift. This was obviously a bit of a problem since I couldn't exactly come back the next day with additional candy bars. So I marched into her office to address this issue. Upon entering the office I made a show of opening a chocolate bar and breaking off exactly one piece and placing it on her desk. I told her that I was going to give her a full candy bar, but I now had to share her chocolate bar with other teachers that I didn't really care so much about anyways. That rule was quietly lifted. Our school collectively hijacked an assembly by singing along to Journey's Don't Stop Believing after the teachers forgot to turn off autoplay on YouTube. Did your school consist of small town girls and city boys? In 11th grade, now 30 years ago, we were told to use Memorial Day as a weather makeup day from Hurricane Hugo. Us students, and many teachers, felt this was disrespectful and suggested to just add the day to the end of the school year. The state insisted. Very few people showed up for school including me, my brother, and most of the faculty. Same, but ours was on a Saturday. Almost no one came to school. My brother missed enough school during the year that the school required he attend summer school. The penalty for not attending summer school? You'll be kicked out of summer school. So he never went, and they didn't hold him back, because he knew all the material. During my senior year of high school, 2008, my school got super strict about cell phones. It got to the point that we weren't allowed to have them out during any point in the day, not even during our lunch period. They claimed that we would send each other test answers or something like that. Anyway, a friend of mine who was a year below me was tired of the rule and how rude teachers were when enforcing it. He literally looked at his phone to check the time and got it taken from him for the rest of the day. That next week he comes to lunch with two older / non-functioning flip phones. He takes the first out and pretends that he's talking to someone on it. A teacher was instantly on him. They walk over and hold their hand out for him to give it up. He looks at the teacher and then proceeds to break the flip phone in half and puts it in their hand. The teacher was speechless. She just walked away without saying anything. He takes the second phone out and does the same thing again. The second teacher thought it was pretty funny. Flash forward to 2015 and I start working at the school as a student mentor. And now everyone is allowed to have their phones out pretty much at any time. How things change. I had a teacher who got into a power struggle with every reasonably smart kid, so we tended not to try in her class. As a result, she began to grade the progress monitoring tool we used. This proved to me that the tool didn't matter. If it did, she would have graded it from the start instead of waiting until she realized she looked bad. So I began to fail every test I took on the platform. She was really angry at me and told me to call my parents. But my parents backed me because choosing to fail is not a violation of any rule. I should have used that with my parents. Kid pissed in the trash can when the substitute wouldn't let him leave to use the restroom. There was a presentation on vaping last year by some poor woman from an advocacy group or something. After every sentence, or whenever she paused, the whole assembly, all 300 kids in my grade, would give a massive standing ovation. We weren't stopped until we had done it like 15 times. Holy shit. We did this exact same thing to the Balfour representative, guy from this company who spent an entire hour trying to convince to buy class rings, shirts, socks, pants, etc. Our class is a little bigger, about 900, and we just erupted after almost every word. The guy started playing into it too. He would make dramatic pauses to give us time to clap. Because of the clapping, we missed the only important part of his speech, which was about buying caps and gowns, and nearly everyone missed the deadline. We had to have a lecture about paying attention, and then they extended the deadline to buy caps and gowns. Blistering heat to the point of people passing out. We're all forced to wear black trousers. We're dying of the heart and a guy comes in shorts. Gets sent home only to return after reading the school rules on uniform. He is in a school colors plaid skirt. Ducking legendary. We hired a mariachi band to follow our dean around school for a day. Best senior prank. Not me but my friend's dad. So a good 50 years ago, his teacher told him his tie was the most important part of the uniform and he had to wear it no matter what. That lunchtime he gathered half his school year, and the next day, about 100 people turned up wearing nothing but underwear and a tie. Late 80s. My high school banned tank tops, but they were allowed with something over them. They also banned mesh or sheer shirts, only allowed with something under them. Guy I knew, pretty much every day, wore a tank top with a mesh shirt over it. In 5th grade I saw a kid punch another kid across the face during playtime and run away from school. They just let him go. I regret not running away from a school more often, tbh. A guy I know ran a campaign to lift my old high school's strict policy on facial hair. which is to have none unless religiously exempt, which they gave you a card for that I and probably others called the beard badge. He refused to shave and had a banner and shirts made that said with a great beard comes great responsibility. In high school during the student body president election my friend started a campaign that was kind of a meme at the time. It was a poster that featured a green faceless figure in a suit that said vote for nobody. Nobody tells the truth. Nobody will fight for you. Nobody cares with nobody being personified as this faceless figure. We put up posters for it with all the others and even started a Facebook page for jokes. My buddy even had a green full body morph suit and planned on running on stage during the other speeches and dancing around. Eventually the admins got word what he wanted to do and called him in and told him if he so much as even went to the assembly in costume or not he would be suspended. So he didn't go to the assembly and all the posters were taken down. Instead he just showed up to school in the suit and just walked around waving at people and giving finger guns at passers-by. He was suspended anyway and went down as a legend for it. Not a specific person, but when a heatwave hit the UK a few years ago and schoolboys in many schools started wearing skirts in protest of having to wear trousers in the scorching heat because there was no stipulation of gender in the uniform regulations. These lads are only a few years younger than me and back in my school days wearing a skirt would get you called gay and ostracized. So it impresses me both in the sense of how fast times have changed and because being technically correct is the best kind of correct. Someone stole a key from the janitor. He just left them on his desk. It happened to be a universal key to all the locks, except for the server room. The server room although had a second hidden door which they found. They came in after school and stole the servers from the school. All the grades and data for the students were on those servers. The teachers had to figure out how to recreate all the students' grades, which honestly they did poorly. Pretty much everyone passed every class. You could just argue for a better grade. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.